I can get started while Shane is figuring out the presentation. So, because this is aside from my introductory slide, which doesn't really have anything but the project name and, the surfboard numbers for the prior projects. This is also a project where the riparian restoration fits into another previous project that, that the lead entity has already seen. So this is West Fork Teanaway River Mile 7.2-8 Reforestation. And as I said, it's associated with two other projects that are doing floodplain reconnection in the West Fork Teanaway. And this project, this reach 7.2-8 was scoped as the upper reach of that larger project. So just to give you an overview of where this project area fits. So this is the West Fork Teanaway, one of the three Teanaway forks. This is the main stem Teanaway down here. So Middle Fork, North Fork. And these areas right here are encompass the entire floodplain restoration project reach. So the lower portions, essentially from the red circle down here, are floodplain reconnection that Mid-Columbia, the Yakima Nation, and WDFW are collaborating on. And that, I believe, construction is anticipated for 2026. Becca, you can let me know if I'm wrong about that. And we're proposing reforestation of the upper canyon reach. Would you mind moving the little?
Yeah.
Thanks. Okay, so this is the project area in red, and the little dots here are West Fork Teanaway. So in, oops. So in 2017, the Jolly Mountain Fire happened in the Teanaway and watershed. And what you're looking at is a fire burn intensity map here. So we're talking about this is a completely different kind of ecosystem, which is kind of fun for my brain. But this this map is showing us in yellow moderate intensity burn, and in red high intensity burns. And basically from River Mile, roughly River Miles, and the others, the green and blue, are low intensity burn or unburned area. And so if you follow up from River Mile 7, there's a lot of moderate to high intensity burn. And that's what we're really talking about, where that moderate to high intensity burn has the potential to impact shading for a long time and set back regrowth for more than 100 years potentially, and also impact a future source of large wood. So there's a lot of wood coming down right now from the fire, and once that's all moved down without regeneration, we're not looking at, we're going to have basically a large wood sparsity. So in moderate and high severity burns, we are we're looking at the dominant tree species, which in our part of the world are, even at this moderate elevation, are still dry adapted tree species. So that's ponderosa pine, Doug fir, grand fir even. And those species have they rely on seed source trees for regeneration. So they have very short viability, less than a year, just a few months to a year. And those seeds also die when soil temperatures exceed 140 degrees. So you just have to get into how it's a totally different way of regenerating than floodplains, right? So so you need to have seed source trees that are providing seeds there. And I realized that I did not tell you about the benefits. We all know about the benefits of overstory trees providing shade, but also soil stabilization, and providing nutrient inputs and also large wood inputs both locally and then downstream. So we're talking about a canyon reach. So we expect that these will probably move downstream. Now, in talking to several folks that actually have spent a lot of time looking at how wood moves downstream, it's not clear in this reach how far. It would take a lot of modeling to look at how far wood is moving downstream, but we know staff have seen burned wood from beyond that burned perimeter here move to a mile downstream. So we know that wood is moving at least a mile, but we don't know exactly how far. Okay. So what I wanted to say about those three species is because we had moderate and high intensity fire, that those fire conditions have the ability to eliminate regeneration opportunities and really setting back recolonization from a period of decades, providing shade in decades to 100 years or more. And in some situations, not saying that this is what's going to happen here, but if it's really hot, dry, it's been a high severity burn, that can result in a long-term vegetation conversion that takes centuries to get back to a forest. The other thing I wanted to say about this area is that it's also in 2001, it was on the TMDL for the Teanaway. So that was 16 years. It made it onto the TMDL for temperature 16 years before the fire hit. And now in this canyon reach, we don't have, we no longer have shading on that stream. I'm showing you limiting factors for all of the West Fork Teanaway projects here. The ones that I want to focus on today are what this particular project will do, which is reduce large wood recruitment, and also, as I mentioned, the high summer water temperatures. The image that you're looking at is showing the spawning locations that were mapped on the West Fork Teanaway, and we're right up here. So we know that it's a good spot for spawning. And we also know that by this floodplain connection and by maintaining a source of large wood and shading, that we're also promoting egg survival and juvenile rearing for Mid-Columbia steelhead. And I understand that this is also, there's also the potential for this area to benefit coho and Chinook. Okay, so you're looking at a cross section of the canyon project area, and we from ridge top to ridge top, and we broke our proposal into two different work sites. One is the riparian management zone, which is the region that's within 200 feet of the channel bank. So site potential tree height in this area is 200 feet. We also know from the literature that large wood moves downhill no more than it originates no more than 200 feet from the stream. So that was interesting to me. I don't work in the large wood placement or movement world much. So it's a very localized thing when you're talking about downslope movement. So we know that this is our priority here for getting shade on the channel and providing wood to the channel. And this is about a 40-acre area throughout that 0.8 mile reach. We also wanted to address the fact that because there's poor regeneration, we wanted to create pockets of recolonization up on the upper slopes that would promote long-term regeneration downslope, especially with, the small number of seed trees available. So, we use 2017 aerial imagery, that you're looking at here, which is immediately post-burn, to map all live remaining conifers that were visible at that point. And that was about 9.5 acres of the 169 acre basin that is outlined here in kind of the orange gold. So as I said, we know that trees, these target tree species have short seed viability, but they also have pretty short dispersal distances. And I looked at several different studies that are looking at seed dispersal and seedling establishment following fire. And really results vary, somewhere between 30 and 100 meters is kind of the extent of where you're going to see. And there's also an inflection in the curve that happens for a lot of these studies around 50 meters from parent trees. So we know that if we were to look at this 9.5 acres of remaining trees and buffered it by about 50 meters, then in our worksite 1 within the riparian management zone, which is highlighted in green, about 20 acres is unforested or does not have the potential to become forested anytime soon. So we would be waiting for seed to colonize and then colonize again. And, you know, you need to wait until you have a reproductive tree for that to kind of move on. It takes many years before you get to a reproductive tree. And then at worksite 2, which is everything above the riparian management zone to the top of the ridge, which is where this gold line here indicates the top of the ridge mapped on LiDAR. 89 of these 129 acres are outside of current dispersal distances for trees. So that's just giving us an idea of what we're looking at in terms of where those new trees are going to come from. So the image that you're looking at now is LiDAR, and it's a little bit easier to see what that gold image is about. So we use that as our target reforestation area. So our approach is to use seed that's available from DNR to propagate seedlings for a 2027 planting. These forestry seedlings require a 2-year growing period. They grow a lot slower. It's really different from a riparian cutting or a riparian container plant. And seed collection really depends on if it's even a mast year. So even reproduction is very different in a forest tree. So seed collection is really different. So our next step is simultaneous with propagation is to go in and ground truth where those regeneration hotspots are within the project area and get those mapped so that we can see where our highest priority areas are within 200 feet of the stream and where that 5 acres would be used for the remaining upper portion of the worksite 2, the upper reach of the project area. Excuse me, the upper slopes. Plant installation is going to be by a forestry contractor. There are some decision support tools that are now available for this kind of planting to choose these moisture, cooler aspects, avoid heat loading, avoid shallow soils, select boulders, stumps, down logs, shrubs as nurse sites to further avoid heat loading. And our target is right in line where we're working with DNR and WDFW on reforestation protocols. So their targets are 140 to 160 live plants per acre in the ground, with wanting to see 25 trees per acre at the end of the day. And then we're also working with them because this is not immediately post-fire. It's totally different than an immediate post-fire rehab. We need to do vegetation control. So that looks like 5,000 conifers across 20 acres in worksite 1 and 1,250 conifers across the upper slopes, worksite 2 in those tiny colonization patches. And I'm wrapping up with our budget, which again is attached. This is the detailed line item budget. So year 1 has us doing planting and propagation, or excuse me, planning and propagation, with planting in year 2. And then we're not doing any stewardship on this. That's very typical for forestry. But we will be doing survival monitoring, which again, this is a really typical cost for survival monitoring, which is pretty cheap. So there you go. So planting, and then our final reporting. So with that, do you have questions for this project, which is pretty unusual for us in our riparian world? But I'm happy to take whatever questions come up.
So do you plant plants or pine cones?
We will be planting container plants, and forestry practices are usually 4 cubic inch to 10 cubic inch clubs.
Not bare root.
They can be planted bare root. But yeah,
No, I only
it
ask if-
depends
I
on,
think a forestry planting crews, this will often get bare root.
Easier to carry,
Yeah.
and the package you want. So they're 2 foot tall when you start.
no, they are pretty short. They're usually within 6 inches to a foot tall. And we're working, like I said, Alex, with DNR on all of our protocols because they're the landowner, and they want to make sure that we're, not doing something unusual. DNR can't plant this area at this point because of OSHA. So we're going to be contracting it out to a private planting group.
DNR state.
DNR is state, Washington Department.
So
of
why
Natural
can
Resources.
they not do it because of OSHA? The private guy can't.
I'm sorry, not OSHA, because of their state safety requirements.
We have, oh, go ahead, Jen.
Yeah,
I haven't looked through all your application materials yet. I could see a discussion around the budget for the within 200 feet and then the above 200 feet or outside of that. Do you have that breakdown if that comes up?
yeah, I didn't break the detailed budget up that way. At least I'll have to check. I don't think I did, but it is put in prison for just that reason around into worksite 1 and worksite 2. So the metrics and the budget are aligned with those 2 work sites. Yes. Thanks. Yeah, Elizabeth suggested that I do that.
So Mark had a question. Is there any successful colonization in this reach, or is it just weeds?
That's a great question. And in a very cursory walkthrough, there was not a lot of recolonization, and that is why one of our first steps is to do a ground truth survey of how much recolonization is happening. We did not see like I said, in the cursory walkthrough, which was not a thorough survey, not possible during this time of year. So last fall, the cursory walkthrough, I did not see abundant seedlings in areas where there were no parent trees, and where there were parent trees, I saw very few seedlings. But that's a great question, and that's one of the first key things, and that is why we included that in the proposal. And I have also been in contact, thanks to Alex, with DNR colleagues who are forest ecologists and looking at the likelihood of regeneration occurring in this reach, given the conditions. And with agreement that this, can I go back? Maybe you could just go back all the way back to the beginning. Okay, good, good. I want to go back to one of the fire intensity maps. So one of the things that we talked about is that they do have some forest plots in this area, and they're all on Corral Creek, which is this low intensity burn area down here. So our DNR colleagues have looked at regeneration likelihood in moderate severity fire. And so we were hoping that we might be able to extrapolate to this area, and their survey points are all along Corral Creek and not in these high moderate intensity burn areas. And so the initial, again, he hasn't done a survey either, right? He doesn't have any better information than I do at this moment on April 23rd. Is that this higher burn severity area, it does not look anything like this, and that we're anticipating that there's not regeneration, but that's a key step in planning the replanting.
And just for clarity, the project area is the red, so we're really looking at a mix of low, moderate, and not much high severity. The question is really within that moderate, how are the regen conditions?
See, there it is. So this is the RMZ is almost, except for this, which is low. And you can see that this is where the trees are constant, the live trees are concentrated, right? In this moderate severity burn area, no tree and no trees, no live trees observed. Low severity burn right here, which is showing up as a gap in my map, is where you've got trees. So what just mapping it on top of each other, where we have moderate to high severity burn, where we weren't picking up live trees in 2017. So, I mean, and this is where you guys as the tag get to figure this out, because, my sense is that if this was if the Teanaway is on the TMDL in 2001, we now have no trees along this whole reach. It's a canyon reach, but we also don't have full shading over that full water. So if we want to accelerate that and not wait 150 to 250 years, then we probably want to get trees started now. And then hopefully we'll be seeing some shade within 30 years. So if we're comfortable with waiting, then most certainly, this is a small piece. This is a small, for the other projects that we're asking for, they're much more expensive, right? So this is a small dollar project, but just in weighing it. The other thing I wanted to say for the Citizens Committee, before I wrap up, is that the West Fork Teanaway is a recreational use area. And there's a trail that, so there's a trailhead actually down, I think it's actually right here. And the trail will continue to be used in this, in the project. And I had one other thing that I wanted to tell you about the project, but now I don't remember. Thanks for the questions.